Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's great to be back with you. And today we are going to be talking about the creative director's role in the business. And so just moving swiftly on because we have a lot to get through in that the creative director does a lot in the business. So we will first of all take a quick recap of where we were last time. Now I need to get to the presentation. Yes, here we are. So is everybody seeing the presentation now instead of me? I think you are, hopefully. So yeah, what we looked at last time, just to have a quick recap, we'll talk about that first of all, the three business hats that you wear when you run a solopreneur creative business. And at the end, we talked about the success wheel last time, and we'll look at that more closely this time in relation to the creative director role. And then we will move very much into looking at how the creative director thinks, what is going on when you've got that hat on, when you're wearing that particular hat. And lots of us avoid this hat. So I'm going to be looking at reasons why you don't avoid this hat, and also why very often we're doing that because we're thinking about it wrongly. We're not actually bringing in the full creative potential of the creative director. We think of these tasks as being boring or too managerial, too businesslike, that sort of thing. So looking at why that is not so when you run your own business, as you all do, and are highly creative as you all are, you get to choose. You get to actually decide how it's going to be. And there are just certain key things that need to be in place. And there are 1,000 ways to do it. And one of them is U-shaped. And that's what we'll be looking at. So the director's role, we'll be talking about assets, the assets of your business, which you've already got some in place, even if you don't know what an asset is. We'll be talking about that, the tools that you are using, making sure that you're taking advantage of all the great machine technology that's out there now, and the different tools that with which we can shortcut all sorts of things. And we'll also look at the processes. Now, we probably won't get to all of that this evening, but we will begin by looking at the main assets for creative solo entrepreneurs, which is what you all are. So yes, for those of you who weren't here last time, everybody who runs a creative business needs to consider three core constituents of that business: the crafter, who is the person who makes the stuff that you're going to sell, or makes the services that you are offering, whatever the core offering is. Crafter is the person who puts that together. And very often we're in our creative business because we love the thing that we make. So if we're a writer, we just love writing and making books. If we're an artist, we love making our art. If we're a coach, we love actually getting somebody and bringing them through either a life coaching experience or career coaching or whatever our speciality is. That's the content of our business. And we generally tend to be very on it. That's the bit we like to do. And then the manager, it's called here, but actually the director, I prefer the term creative director because manager conjures up sort of, somebody in a very corporate environment, whipping everybody in the cubicle. And that's not what you're doing at all. And then the third hat is the entrepreneur. And we'll be looking at these different things as the months go by. We will look at them all. But tonight it is the creative director's role. And I want to look at the way, just comparing the way the director thinks about everything in relation to the other two hats. So first of all, in terms of having happy customers. So again, as creatives, maybe you don't even think of the people that you are serving as customers, but they are. And it's good to begin to think about them in that way because they are people who have a problem or a pain point or something that they want, and you are there to serve them, to essentially give them what they are looking for. And your business will thrive and based on your ability to serve those people and give them what they want. And in a later workshop, we'll be talking about how you find your core niche. And I know that some of you are already aware of what your micro niche is, but some of you are not. And so we will be looking at that. But it is a very good idea to get a picture in your mind of the person that you are actually appealing to. And I know you may be making different services for different people, but you should have a core person that you exist to, to put a smile on their face, and to have a think about that, and always be thinking about that, and always be thinking about how you keep them smiling. So the crafter in you will think about that in one way. The crafter will think about producing great stuff, how you actually make your the core of the business. As I was talking about, if you're a writer, it'll be the books. So the crafter's thinking, how I keep the customer happy is I write a great book if I'm a writer. The entrepreneur will be thinking, oh, customer need is an opportunity to make money. And if you're a passion-based business, as we are, as creative, as solo entrepreneurs, how to also make meaning. But the director is thinking much more practically. The director is thinking how you have happy customers is you sort pricing, you sort the features that are available, you make sure they're easily available, you make sure that there's support if anything goes wrong, and you've got good problem solving services all along the way. So happy customer to the crafter, the entrepreneur, the director are different in terms of how they think about it. Similarly, when it comes to the work to be done, the crafter thinks, I love making my stuff, and that's what the work of the business is. The entrepreneur thinks, how can we expand this business? Our work is to get out to as many people as possible, to grow our income, to grow our influence. But the director says, what work has to be done so that this business runs smoothly, so I'm happy, so I'm not, worn out, so all the bits that are and make up the business actually cohere and come together in a way that keeps the crafter making and keeps the entrepreneur out there expanding the business. So the director's role is it sees the work that has to be done as essentially getting those processes, those tools, and those assets working well together. Again, perspective is quite different. The crafter looks kind of bottom up, making the tasks, head down, gets on with it. The entrepreneur looks from the inside out. They're essentially thinking about customers, thinking about collaborators, thinking about influencers that they can be in touch with. The director is looking top down, seeing the whole business, how it does what it actually was set up to do. And very often as the crafter, we can actually forget what the business exists to do because we can get so caught up in doing our own stuff. So the director part of us is the person that keeps all of that in place. And I realize as I'm talking, making us all sound very schizophrenic, but it really is useful to divide out the different roles in that way and to think of yourself as a different person when you're playing these different roles and keeping the other part of yourself in check and running it together. And the director does that more than anybody else in the trio. The director is the person who actually makes all that happen, integrates it, brings it together. Time, too, we think, take a different time perspective when wearing each of the different hats. So the entrepreneur thinks about the future, aiming out there, got the big vision, and everything then works back from there. Here is the vision. This is where we want to be in 5 years. Here's where we want to be in a year's time. Let's break that down into what we're going to do each quarter. Let's break that down into what we're doing each month. Let's break that down into what we're doing each week. Let's break that down into what I'm supposed to be doing today. And we will actually, when we get to the entrepreneur role, we will start doing that with your business too. The crafter thinks about now. What I make today, I'm creating the future. If I don't get the head down and make the stuff today, there would be nothing to sell tomorrow. The director integrates both of those, looks at the existing tools and processes, and is always engaged in this kind of idea of continuous improvement. We can always do it better. And again, always thinking of how all the different parts come together. And the goals. The entrepreneur wants influence, impact, big growth. The crafter, the goal is just to do what they do for the joy of doing it. But the director seeks order. They want order in the room, and they often end up cleaning up after a mess or an explosion of activity by either crafter or entrepreneur. And finally, success. In terms, how do each of these people that you are define success? Well, the entrepreneur in you will define success as, you have created a business, a system that turns your ideas into value for other people, into an income for you. That's success. It's a money-based vision of success. The crafter thinks about having enough happy customers out there to pay you to keep on doing what you're doing. Doesn't really look beyond that. But the director is looking again at that integrated system and looking at the benefit to the crafter. So making sure that the tools and the processes and everything that's in place is actually allowing the crafter to do the work, the making work, and we'll be thinking about having the proper tools and processes in place so that when the entrepreneur, creates an opportunity, sees a way to turn an idea into value for the business, value for the customers, that it is actually possible to do that there is enough resource, that you have enough time, you have enough energy, you have enough space, you have enough going on in the business that supports that endeavor. And also the director will be thinking about the other people that your business touches. So it would be perhaps other creatives that you work with, like designers or your web people or whatever, your virtual assistants, if you hire assistants. And, we will be encouraging you as time goes on that you should do that and should be outsourcing some of these roles and jobs, because it is very difficult to integrate them all and do everything, and you're not equally good at all of these. And so recognizing strengths and weaknesses and appropriating the proper activities to different people and outsourcing some stuff is very much part of creating a good functioning business that nurtures you and feeds you. So the director is thinking about that, but also always thinking about that, but also thinking about the other people that the business touches, other team members you might have, of course, your customers, the people who will buy your stuff, your clients, whoever your business is touching. So let's just hop back into the chat room and just see if anybody has any questions. How are we doing? Is this all making sense? Are we all feeling very directorial? Anybody got any questions before I move on to looking specifically at assets? Okay, everybody seems to be happy. I'm not seeing any messages coming through. Any questions, any ideas, any comments, anything to say, or shall I just continue? Could somebody just put a comment in the chat room just to say that, yes, you can hear me and that everything's okay? Because I'm not seeing any activity there right now. Hi, Kristen. And Ray has just joined too. Okay, you're hearing me. All good. Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Marie. Okay, listening and interesting. Okay, that's good. Everything good so far. Thank you. So I'm going to take it from that then that everything makes sense. Heidi says so it must be true. Everything just makes sense. So what I'd like to do now is drill down into assets in particular. Okay, everybody seems happy. All right then, good. No questions as yet. Right, let's look at assets then. Just before we get to specifically looking at assets, which will be the core of most of what we'll be talking about today, for those of you who may not be sure what I'm talking about when I talk about assets and tools and processes, just to explain that. So firstly, assets are essentially anything that puts money in your pocket outside of labor. So what I am proposing for you is that you take advantage of the enormous opportunities that we now have as makers and creators and creative types, and people who want to bring our passion, our mission out to the world and, create a business around that. We can do that for the very first time in history in great numbers because of digital technology. And what this allows us to do is to actually have a business. So before, creatives were very much limited, aside from those who did actually crack through the gatekeeper system and get assets through intellectual property. So, made a film, had a best-selling book, whatever. That was a way in which you could actually sort of have a business. Really, you were feeding somebody else's business, but you got a percentage of rights from their business activity, which allowed you to carry on as the maker and the crafter and keep on making the stuff. And it was almost a business, but not quite, because really so much of the rights and the intellectual property, inherent, everybody respected that you had the rights and that you owned the rights. But at the same time, they took 90% or more of the income from those rights. So you weren't getting a huge amount from it. So most creative people in most roles had to do day jobs and or some kind of freelancing to support the other work. Now, what we have is a situation where you don't have to, you can get beyond freelancing. So freelancing is very like working for your living. It is essentially trading your time for money. But business is something different, and business is what we're going to be trying to build here over the next year. If you're not already up and running a successful business, you will be and should be within a number of months. But key to that, absolutely 100% non-negotiable. One of the few things that I won't be saying, we all do it differently and you decide how to do it, is asset building. It's the idea, it's the understanding what an asset is. And an asset essentially is something that will put money in your pocket when you're not actually working. So you're not trading time for money. You've actually created an asset that goes out into the world and generates income for you when you've moved on to making or doing something else. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different kinds of assets that you're building as a creative entrepreneur in a minute. But it's very important that you get that distinction. And essentially, I think the simplest way to think about it is an asset puts money in my pocket outside of my labor. I'm not trading time for money. And that is, as I said, what we're concentrating on here. It's not advice on how to get freelance gigs or how to get a job as a creative. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about building an actual business that you own, that's you shaped, and that will create lots of different kinds of assets, which are then saleable if you decide you don't want to do certain aspects of it anymore. Or as I said, they're feeding you your income as we go. Tools are shortcuts, hacks, using machine intelligence. And I will give you examples we'll talk about tools, I think, next time. And I will give you examples of a number of the tools that I use to run the Alliance of Independent Authors, to run my publishing business, and also to help me with the writing, which is the core of my business. Processes then are both the creative process itself, which is a 7-stage process that I know a number of you have heard me talk about before, and we will look at that in more detail when we come to the process part of things. But it also means your way of doing things, how you have decided to integrate the different aspects of your business, all the things we were talking about before when we spoke about the entrepreneurial role, the placements, the making of the products in the craft role, how you bring all those pieces together. That's your process. And generally it's a kind of trial and error thing. And most of us can improve those and streamline those. So very often when we're starting out and we're just thinking about ourselves as business people, we're quite overwhelmed because our processes are not good. And we can sometimes think, oh, it's me, I'm no good at this, I'm useless at that. We're doing a lot of learning by doing as well. So the first time you do everything, it's really hard. The next time it's easier. And by the time it gets the third or fourth time, it's actually can become quite rote and easy. So unfortunately, though, people give up before they get to that point. They don't understand that it is actually a matter of improving the process, and they think they can't do this now, we'll never be able to do it, goodbye, I'm out of here, which is a real shame. Okay, so these three then is what we are looking at: assets, tools and technology, and processes. And just, I think you've downloaded the map which Janet sent through in the email. So if you could just take a quick moment to just score yourself off the top of your head, how good do you think you're doing in terms of asset creation? Yeah, and you'll have a much clearer notion of how you actually are doing in a few moments when we've discussed asset creation in detail. But I just want to get a sense of your own sense of where you are with that. How good do you think you are on tools and tech? How much have you gone out there and searched out the best possible way of doing things? For example, a great example of a great tool that I'm always pushing on people is speech to text, which now can, really save you a lot of typing time and save your poor fingers from typing all sorts of things, from your social media chats to your actual publishing content, whatever business you're in. But so few people take the time to actually just learn how to do it. So that sort of thing. How good do you think you're doing on the tools and techs? From 0 in here at the center, 10 out here at the edge. And processes, how streamlined, how effective, how useful to your business are the processes that you've put in place? On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy or otherwise are you with those? So just take a moment to mark that up. Marie-Claire said she missed it in the email. Janet, could you put the download link in the chat room so everybody has it? And don't worry, you don't need to do it right now. You can do it when the workshop is over. But just again, it's just really about giving yourself an idea of where you are on these things, and then looking at it again in a couple of months' time. You will see how much you've learned and how much you've moved on, and how easy certain things that seemed completely confusing and overwhelming, how easy they become once you actually understand what you're doing from a creative business perspective. All right then, so let's talk a little bit about assets. And in the old days, when people were talking about business assets, they were usually talking about things like stock and plant, the machinery that made the goods if you were in manufacturing, the actual stock that you had built up and the products that you had for sale, the buildings in which you operated. None of that applies to you guys generally. Well, I shouldn't say none, because there may be some of you that are still involved at that level, but I think the vast majority of people who are attending these workshops are actually engaged with digital assets. And certainly that's what I would encourage, because it is so much cheaper for an individual and so much easier in so many ways, and also so much better in terms of, opening up a global audience. And no matter how small your micro niche is, there are still more than enough customers at a global level to give you a full and good income if you set yourself up well around your assets. So what sort of assets are we talking about then as solo entrepreneurs? First of all, intellectual property. Now, that's a term that puts a lot of people off, and I understand why. It's a very sort of, it comes trailing a huge amount of legality and contracts and ideas around copyright and so on. But you don't need to think about any of that very much. You just need to know that owning the rights to your intellectual property is essentially what it's all based on. We get to earn our living as creators, as creatives, because intellectual property exists and because there is such a thing as copyright, and because business in general respects that right, that the creator deserves to be recompensed for their creative work. Now, they have respected that, as I mentioned earlier, while at the same time, doing a lot of rights grabbing and paying the creators as little as possible and so on. That is also going on even at in the most respectable creative organizations. The creator has not in general been that well treated, and I think that is the big turnaround, and that's what gets me so super excited about the times we live in now. We can actually take control of our own intellectual property. So your intellectual property is words, first of all. Every business is now in the publishing business. In order to explain who you are digitally to people, you are going to be writing stuff. You're going to have a website, you're going to be writing social media updates, and you're going to be reaching out to people with written pitches. So the written word is absolutely core to your intellectual property. And it might be in the form of your blog, it might be books, might be, as I said, emails or whatever, but all of this adds up to something that actually has real value. So what I'd like you to think about is that we are actually moving from a spoken culture to a written culture. People, despair at everybody on their phones and, see this as a terrible thing. Well, it is a terrible thing if it's not managed well, like everything. But if it is managed well, it's actually, I think, a marvelous thing, because I won't have a writer, but the written word has such power and, carries across countries, carries across time. And generally speaking I know looking at some of the trolls, you wouldn't necessarily agree with it. This certainly doesn't happen all the time, but generally speaking, we are more thoughtful in writing than we are in spoken word. We are more considered, and probably once we get over, if we write well and we learn how to write spontaneously, we're probably more ourselves. And a lot of you will be familiar with the free writing technique, which actually liberates your words and definitely adds to that. So you need to be thinking about becoming as good a writer as you can be in terms of copywriting of and this has nothing to do with being a writer in terms of the content that you're producing. Speaking to those of you who are writers, I'm talking about the writing that goes around any business now, any digital business. So audio and video are also intellectual property assets. So if you do a podcast, if you do any video, all of these are things that can work for you, that can go out and either pull in prospects who are interested in what you do, or can actually have value in and of themselves where you can charge for them. So obviously, the obvious one there would be an online training course of some kind, but also people are paying for the background to businesses and personal stuff, where they become interested in the maker themselves. And there are all sorts of ways that you can actually create and exploit intellectual property assets. The final one I'd like you to think about that often gets overlooked is methodology. So if you have a method or a way of doing things, that also is intellectual property. So, this very webinar that you are attending at the moment, that's part of my intellectual property, this Go Creative method, which is about, doing business the creative way, all the different maps and ideas and ways of approaching business that are embedded in this whole concept and in this book series. The methodology itself is intellectual property. And when you get to a point where your intellectual property is important, you might want to think about protecting it. And that's something that we will do a session on at some point down the line. So that's the most obvious, I think, of the intellectual property. It's what we think of when we think of it's the most obvious asset. It's what we think of when we think of our assets, the assets in our business. We tend to think about the stuff that we have made. But there are also what we call brand assets. So your brand asset is more nebulous, but it's really, really important. It's your philosophy, your identity. So it's what makes you, you. It's very much connected to the micro niche that you've decided to work in. It's very much connected to the passion that's got you doing this thing in the first place. It's very much connected to the mission to serve a particular type of customer. All of these come together in, what you stand for, who you are. It's you as well, what age you are, whether you're male or female, your color, your culture, your creed. Everything is part of this idea, because everything in these solopreneur creative businesses it's built around the maker. It's built now around the person, and we can sometimes be a bit uncomfortable with that, and it's something that we need to learn to get used to. And I think the way we get used to it is actually like this, connecting in with people who think in similar ways, finding your tribe, finding the people who feed and nurture you, and that you are serving them and they're interested in what you're doing and where you come together and where you connect. It's really important to understand that people are looking for people now when it comes to this kind of business. It is you may be familiar with the business to business idea in conventional business. Are you a business to business business, or are you a business to consumer business? Is a big distinction in conventional business. Well, I think what we are people to people businesses. We're kind of heart to heart businesses even, so to begin to think about that and how that applies to you. Then there are what we call market assets. And this is kind of where you position yourself in the marketplace. In each micro niche that we occupy will have particular kinds of features which are unique to that micro niche and which are really important and core. But within it then there will be different businesses appealing to different cohorts within that micro niche, even in a very small micro niche. And this is what we mean by market assets. So how you position yourself within your own micro niche. The kind of quality that you are presenting. Well, of course, we're all trying to run quality business and producing quality products, but there are different levels of quality expected depending on where you position yourself in the marketplace. Are you the affordable end of the stream, or are you the premium end of the stream? Then convenience is also something you will position yourself around, or your USP is what they call it in marketing speak. Your unique selling proposition. What makes you you? What is striking and obvious about you? So to give an example, the Alliance of Independent Authors, we're very much about trust and authority. We kind of curate the entire self-publishing world and bring people back what we've seen to work best for most people. We don't get distracted by the latest trend or, one particular way of doing things. It's all about being dependable and trusted and authoritative. Another organization for indie authors might be, one of our partner members actually is for insecure writers. It's for writers who kind of struggle very much with a sense of they shouldn't be doing this, and they're not good enough, they're not worthy to be writers, and so on. This group exists to say, actually, yes, you are. Come on, get on. And so that's their positioning within the market. So to think about, as well as thinking about the person that you're trying to reach and appeal to, think about how you're positioning yourself. Some of the creative artists among you will need to think about, are you trying to delight? Are you trying to shock? So it's all about your unique you. And part of your market assets as well, of course, is your channels, your social media presence, your blog, particularly your own website, but also other channels that you will use to reach and get your message out when you're wearing your entrepreneur hat. So these are the various forms of market assets, and it's about where you kind of position yourself within the marketplace. And then there are the product assets themselves, which can break down into different kinds of classes. You may have certain products that you give away for free because they help people to see what you do, and they draw a tribe into you, or maybe you get an email address in return for a free product. There's what you call products for prospects. So it's something that's at the low cost end of what you do. You might think of a book if you're a business person, if you're a coach or an interior designer or something, you might think of a book as a product for prospects. Obviously, the writers among us don't think about books in that way, but it's very common in business to write a book in order to put it out there that you are an authority on your specific area. And then there'll be your core product, and that should generally be a sort of a medium price range. And you may think then of also adding in some sort of a premium product. So thinking about what you do and how you do it, how you shape it up into different kinds of packages. The businesses that make most money that we see, that may have the best income and the most stable and steady income, are those that have product assets of different kinds. Having just one kind of product, there is a model that works for. It's a low cost, high volume, and produce very, very often and very fast and pretty repetitively. That it works in that model. But generally speaking, that's exceptional, and not a lot of people can actually, if you can deliver that, you're probably not attending this workshop. You just do what you do and you churn that out, and your people expect it. And it's an incredibly skilled and targeted way to capitalize on your skills, but it's unusual. I think you're kind of born like that. It's not something that most people can be trained into, and most people don't have the market. The market doesn't work that way for most people. Outside of that small cohort, what works best is to have different product classes at different price points. Okay, so if we could take a look at the download then for this coming quarter. What I'd like you to do, and again, Janet, maybe you could pop up the link to that particular download for those who may not have it already. So what I'd like you to do now is, again, to ask if anybody has any questions, because I've gone through a lot there. There's a lot for you to think about. And I'd like you to take a look at the worksheet and just think about your own assets, what's in the different classes that I was talking about there, your own tools that you're aware of, that you use. So we really can't be in digital business without using some tools, and you may well have things that you're unendingly grateful to. Think about that, and think about your processes. And in each of the large clouds there, this is the quarterly sheet here. So I want to ask you the question in each of these clouds, and it's the one in the big cloud on the left-hand side: assets, processes, and tools. In each of these, if you were to do one thing over the coming quarter that would improve your assets, that would improve your processes, that would improve your tools, what would it be? So that's giving you 12 weeks, which is a long time. And over that 12 weeks, what is the one big thing you could do to improve your assets? So could you add another product? Could you improve your market positioning? Could you work on your brand and presentation? Could you decide who your core customer is and how you're going to, what you're going to set up for them? Could you get an understanding of the methodology that you're using so you could actually put it down in a way that could help other people? Could you create a course? What's the one thing you could do that would give you the most creative and commercial profit? That's what's there on the other side. So I've frozen, have I? Oh dear. Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm hoping that I have unfrozen. Marie says I have frozen. I'm back. Okay, that's great. Not sure how much of that you got. So just to repeat, so to think about the one good thing that, one big good thing you could do under the asset, process and tools headings. And what I mean, Jane says, oh, I'm laughing. Jane says, that was a brief Max Headroom moment. And then she said, that dates me. Well, it dates me too, Jane. I love when they freeze you like that. You always look so well. Anyway, moving swiftly along. So yeah, thinking about those three, assets, processes, tools, but thinking about them not in, oh, I could do this, I could do that, because in this business that we're all in this crazy world, there are so many things we could do. It's never about opportunity now. It's never about potential to do things. We're in this abundance culture where there's 100,000 things you could do. What I want you to do is to isolate the one big thing you could do over the next 12 weeks that would deliver the most creative and commercial profit for your business. So think in terms of profits. As you all know, I'm big on passion. I really believe in the energy of doing what you love to do, and that carries a business a very long way. But it doesn't if you don't marry it with profit, thinking about profits. If it's just about passion and making your stuff and putting it out there, that's a very valid thing to do, but that's not a business. A business thinks about profit, and profit means you're making somebody happy. So when you think of these assets, particularly, but also have a look at processes and tools, and we will look at both of those in more detail next time out. When you're thinking about the assets, though, in particular, what asset could you add to your mix that will give you the most profit, creative and commercial, over the next quarter? And next time what we'll do is we'll break that down into months and weeks and so on. So that is it for this month. Again, just to give you the opportunity to ask any questions if you have any. Also to invite you to our Facebook group, Creativist Club, because I know there is a lot of information in these workshops being thrown at you, and the webinar format doesn't necessarily allow for the kind of interplay that happens in a live setting. So you may have questions that will rise as soon as the webinar is over. So that's what the Creativist Cafe is there for. It's members of the Creativist Club are there, but I'm also opening it to any of you in the webinar who would like to join in with us there too, to explore, ask questions. We set our intentions for the week and the month, and we support each other, and it, we do all sorts of things over there. So Janet, if you had the link to that, we could give it to people just before we go so that we can keep in touch from session to session. And thank you to those of you who are appreciating the workshop. I'm glad that some of you have at least found it useful. I hope it has something there has been useful to all of you. I do think this split for the director into these three core things, it's enough. You know, you can get much more complicated with business, and as you know, there's so much business theory and management theory. I find it, most of it, completely off-putting and completely irrelevant. So this is as simple as it is possible to be while still taking a business perspective. So hopefully it is useful to you. And yeah, Janet, just before we go, could we get the Facebook group name up there? I'm not sure if Janet is still with us or whether we've had a breakdown in communication. Let's see if I can find it. I have it here. Yeah. So yeah, this is our Facebook group. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you over there. I think you're all signed up for the Monday Motivator. I'm back now from the holidays, so that will be resuming on Monday coming. If there's ever anything you need or want, please do ask. I'm very available in the Creators Cafe, in there every day. So if you have specific questions, if you're thinking about any of this, if you're trying to make any of it work and, you know, coming across a problem, you can be pretty sure that somebody else is also coming across that problem. So it's really helpful to hear about it. So thank you, one and all, and see you next month, which will happen on the first Tuesday next month, as it should do, not so as late like we were this month. And thank you so much. The Insecure Writers. Yes, I can get you that a link. Mari, if you pop into the Ally forum, you can find them there, and they're actually on the Self-Publishing Advice blog. We did a post on them within the last week while I was away, that was posted. So if you go to selfpublishingadvice.org/ally blog, you will find that all about them there. Okay, thank you everybody for being here, and look forward to seeing you next month or in the Creators Cafe. Bye bye.